first one, which actually leans really well into your first brain tool, which is all about words too, in a different way.
For sure. And I think my first one as a higher level is to document all the stories that you tell yourself. And Sam, I think it was a really interesting point. You talk about emotion. And as we're talking with the listeners, you've got to ask yourself, like, how does emotion manifest itself? And it normally manifests itself through story. But the story is not that we just tell other people, but the stories that we tell ourselves. And I'm a quote machine today, Sammy, but Richard Feynman, who I love, Nobel Prize winning laureate again, he said, the first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest to fool. And that whole idea of self-delusion is really, really pronounced. We tell our stories, self-stories, that obviously based on this emotion that convinces us of not taking action. And it comes that self-fulfilling prophecy that leads us not to do anything. And so to get really, really practical, if it takes Sam's idea of noting the emotion, from a recognition standpoint, ask yourself, what stories do I tell myself based on fear? And to get really practical, and I can share this with you, I've started recently with one of my mates, Ollie, who I'm reconnecting with in Melbourne. And he introduced me to this whole idea of IFS, and it's called Internal Family Systems. For those that don't know much about it, I'll put it in the show notes, but it's just basically a form of therapy. And it basically posits that the whole is made up of parts, and those parts are personalities, and you want to talk to those individual parts. So for me, one of my individual parts I've got is the analytical part, if you haven't noticed already, which is this clear, like, Sam's laughing because he knows this in our meetings. It's like, Kieran, you bloody robot, what are you doing? Analyzing everything.
You guys should say the Google Docs we have. The analysis is incredible.
But this whole idea of IFS, and the principle I want to give you practically is find a person that you trust. Genuinely trust, and actually schedule into your calendar every single week for 30 to 30 minutes, maybe to an hour, and actually speak about the stories that you might tell yourself. And I've done this with Ollie over the past 2 weeks. And over the first one was a bit awkward. The second one was so much easier because I got used to the discussion point. But that self-awareness feedback loop of actually saying, hey, what I think is versus what actually is so far removed that it gives you that context to be like, hey, maybe this story isn't beneficial to me. Maybe it's based on fear, and the fear is all inside my head. As Naval Ravikant says, it's not peace of mind, it's peace from mind. And I think that becomes a really important tool that we can link, hopefully for you as listeners, noting the emotion, but looking at what the story is that is manifested as a result of that emotion.
Totally. Can I add a tiny bit of color commentary to that? Some context. So you talked about self-prophecies or self-fulfilling prophecies. There is actually a brain mechanism that lives inside your head that make these a reality. And it's called the reticular activating system, or the RAS. And what its function is to do is to confirm evidence of things you already believe or think. So as Kieran says, if you're having these fear conditioned memories, responses, and thoughts or narratives, your RAS will look for information that confirms these exist. It's called confirmation bias. There's a whole bunch of research on it. And this is why it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy, because your brain starts to discredit information that disagrees with this viewpoint, that says, no, Kieran, you're not afraid of this, while actively seeking out information that says, yes, Kieran, you are afraid of this. And that's where the perpetual cycle comes in. It's not us talking about it. It's a function of your brain, the self-fulfilling prophecy.